Currently, we are working on a digital critical edition and interpretation of the correspondence between the Hungarian avant-garde artist couple, Lajos Kassák and Jolán. First, I will present this 4-year research project, and then we will explore some unexpected results of this ongoing project related to the conference theme of Metropolis and also of emigration. The correspondence we are working on covers the avant-garde period of the artist couple from 1909 to 1928. It consists of around 300 letters exchanged between Kassák and Jolán Simon, along with approximately 200 others exchanged with Hungarian and transnational avant-garde figures. This provides a completely new and complex insight not only into the Hungarian avant-garde, but also into the functioning of transnational avant-garde networks. Naturally, Lajos Kassák and Jolán Simon exchanged letters when they were not in the same city, most notably during Kassák's emigration in Vienna between 1920 and 1926, a period when Kassák engaged in his most internationally visible editorial work related to his journal Ma, which means today. One of the project's primarily aim is to publish open access digital facsimiles of all the letters. We are also transcribing them and reconstructing the texts according to the standards of a digital critical edition. Using the platform Transcribus, we segment the manuscripts by lines, allowing the online edition to display the original texts alongside the transcriptions. In the long run, this will also enable the automation of transcribing Kassák's and Jolán Simon's handwriting. We also enrich the published letters with metadata using the universally recognized text encoding initiative, TEI, XML markup language, which also allows our project to integrate with global research and digital humanities initiatives in the future. In this work, we have been closely collaborating with the Department of Digital Philology at the National Széchenyi Library, which is simultaneously producing several other digital critical editions. Besides the critical edition, another key aim of the project is to reassess certain aspects of the history of Hungarian avant-garde within a transnational context. First, as part of so-called horizontal art history, we align with the Kassák Museum mission to position Kassák and Simon Jolán as active participants in the transnational network of avant-garde journals. Second, we provide context-sensitive analysis of the Hungarian avant-garde, thereby laying the foundation for, I would say, a vertical or social history of the Hungarian avant-garde. One of the key research questions this correspondence allows us to analyze in depth is the paradoxical situation in Kassák's career. While his editorial activity during his 1920s, Viennese emigration was the most transnationally visible of his life, at the same time he was simultaneously isolated from the social and symbolic context that were crucial to him. These included an isolation from local communities both in Vienna and Budapest, isolation from the Hungarian language, which was pivotal to him as poet, and workers' movement during his emigration in Austria. Zsolt Petrányi, in his introductory words, rightly highlighted the importance of the once émigré artists who returned home after their emigration, and this happened also to Kassák, who encountered various challenges once he returned to Hungary. Counterintuitive revelation emerged during our work on this project, that is, although both Kassák and Jolán Simon came from working class backgrounds and viewed the urban industrial peripheries as both real social spaces for living and political activism, as well as symbolic spaces throughout the 1910s and 1920s, at the same time they struggled to find a proletarian audience at this time. despite the avant-garde's rhetoric of addressing the people or brothers in their programmatic texts, a closer examination of the advertisements in the journals of Kassák reveals a different target audience, the middle class. These ads prompted products and services associated with the middle-class lifestyles rather than those of the working class. Additionally, distribution and promotion were concentrated in middle-class spaces like downtown boulevards, cafes, and bookshops, rather than working-class neighborhoods. This indicates that while Kassák's journals may have envisioned an idealized, somewhat idealized working-class audience, their actual readership was primarily composed of middle-class cultural figures and consumers during their avant-garde period. In contrast, from 1928 on, Kassák and Simon shifted their focus to producing a journal aimed at a working-class audience, resulting in the creation of the already mentioned Munka circle. Munka means labor or work in Hungarian. This was both a periodical and a circle. But this is another story, as our current project ends exactly with that year. At this point, I would like to invite Sára Bagdi to continue with the analytical insights our project offers.
Briefly about what we can do with this material we have right now in our hands. So, Kassák's works, including... Sorry. Okay. I'm going to try to do my best to... Okay. So Kassák's works, including his avant-garde magazines, have been researched extensively in the last few decades. However, the contribution of the women of his household, including his partner, later wife, Jolán Simon, Simon's daughters, Piroska Nagy and Etel Nagy, and Kassák's mother, has been rarely mentioned. Jolán Simon has been particularly neglected. In an attempt to fill this void, in our research, we are going to dedicate more attention to Simon, and we argue that if we would like to better examine the successes and failures of Kassák and Simon's artistic production, first we need to understand patterns of labor organization within the whole of their household. Discussing Kassák and Simon's household structures, can help us avoid those narratives that tend to interpret the invisible, often gendered aspects of Simon's everyday duties either slowly as her individual choice or as a proof of her genuine dedication and passion for arts. It also enables us to better highlight the structural dispositions that made the extra work she put into networking indispensable for continuing her partners and her culture production without further interruption after Kassák had to emigrate to Vienna due to his participation in the 1919 Hungarian Soviet Republic. After the fall of the Commune, Simon did not only have to reorganize the everydays of her household, but she also had to find ways to keep interconnected despite the partial disintegration of their previous allies. In 1919, Kassák reestablished his magazine Ma in Vienna, but he was constantly preparing for moving back to Budapest, and his successful return heavily relied on how effectively he could access the already existing cultural infrastructure of the Hungarian Social Democratic Party and the bourgeois press. Since Kassák's own periodical was banned from Hungary, publishing his texts in Hungarian journals and periodicals played a key role in keeping Kassák's name circulating in the public discourse. During these years of emigration, Simon represented Kassák in front of the Budapest-based publishing houses and editors, and as a trained actress, she regularly performed Kassák's works on the stages of the Hungarian workers' associations. She also made sure that Kassák's essay reached the editors and collected the payments after the published pieces. The correspondence, So the correspondence offers insights into the everyday management of these transactions and paints an overview of Kassák and Simon's income-earning strategies, along with the resulting internal labor division that shaped their daily lives. Even more importantly, it helps us understand how the couple mobilized common practices of the multi-generation working-class households to build a successful and internationally recognized avant-garde network despite coming from a poorer working-class background, while also running a low-profit business. To achieve a more nuanced understanding of the underlying structural necessities behind these dynamics and to shed light on those gendered aspects of the labor organization of the Kassák-Simon household that mostly remained invisible in our research, we look at the cultural production of Simon and Kassák through the lenses of the Marxist feminist understanding of household formation. Household in this context is defined as an income pooling unit. Members of the same household are those individuals who enter into long-term income pooling arrangements. They do not necessarily live together or share any kinship, but the way how their income will be used and how each individual member of the household fit into the labor force depends considerably on the household's collective needs and priorities, meaning that the labor division of the household pretty much predetermines what kind of formal wage earning practices can appear as accessible option for each household member. Similar to the Marxist feminist scholar Wilma Dunaway's definition of the semi-proletarian household, where the formal wages of the family members are insufficient to cover the full cost of the household maintenance, Kassák's low income from his artistic work required his family members to engage in additional unpaid reproductive labor and informal paid labor, thereby contributing to the household's total income. Simon, for example, regularly engaged in subsistence production. For example, she sewed clothes for herself and her family, or sometimes she also sold them. And she ran petty commodity businesses. This is when she basically sold the same clothes. Besides all of these, she also helped Kassák with the production and dissemination of his periodicals. So to illustrate this, I brought a shorter quote from her. Truly, I tell you, I would have to come back long ago. It means that she is now in Budapest, but she wants to return to Vienna. If I could scrape together some money, but it's not happening. I haven't sold a single piece of clothing I brought here. The promised performance evenings are falling through one by one. I can't sell any paintings, and it's very hard to gather subscribers for the magazine. Besides illustrating how the household as an economic unit becomes inherently intertwined with the macro patterns of the formal labor market, household formation theory offers us an applicable categorization of different income earning strategies and provides a vocabulary to address less visible wage earning practices in an appropriate historical context. For example, in this case, we have a name for what is reselling clothes. It belongs to the category of pretty commodity business, and we also know that in which period and in what type of household it was common. However, instead of aiming for an empirical categorization of what we witnessed in Simon's case, we strive for an analytic approach that allows more room for analyzing long-term dynamics between the formal and informal sectors during times of crisis when wages in the formal sector drop. Female household members tend to take on more additional reproductive and informal tasks. It is therefore of special importance to consider how these dynamics of informalization affected Simon's career and what role she played in mitigating the economic damage her household suffered after the fall of the Commune. Despite she was trained in a minor theater school after she left factory work during a short period of the 1919 Commune, she got hired by a Budapest-based theater as an actress. In the 1920s, while Kassák stayed in Vienna, she continued to perform, but without holding a formal position tied to any cultural institution. Still, it wasn't only Simon who struggled with the formalization of her cultural work. Kassák also faced continuous challenges in publishing his periodical and maintaining his formal position as an editor. This precarious state of Kassák's cultural work necessitated the mobilization of all the available resources of his household. Contrary to formal employment, the informal, non-contracted forms of income earning allowed Simon to dedicate quality time for helping Kassák, both in the production and the dissemination of his periodicals. But it also meant that Simon was often forced to single-handedly coordinate multiple casual and rather erratic income-earning opportunities. Simon's letters allow us to make the amount of the errands she had to run parallel visible, as well as the number of people she had to mobilize in order to get through with each of these businesses. Her letters also show how much mental and emotional energy it took to keep the partners engaged despite the financial uncertainties of all these businesses. So here's another quote to illustrate this aspect of this whole discourse. Anyway, I feel very abandoned because I can't even complain. Since Tamás, it means Tamás Aladár, him and Kassák worked together on the periodical 365. Sorry, I'm very bad at numbers. It lived only for 2 editions. I'm looking at them. Okay, yes. And they struggled a lot with the publication of these pieces and with all the other Kassák publications. So, since Tamás immediately loses hope and falls in despair, thinking that we can't achieve anything, so I have to be the one to encourage and motivate him. But to be honest, I really don't know how I will make it home. And I already arrived at the conclusion in which I just wanted to make a compilation of those aspects of the Kassák-Simon household that the correspondence can make visible and stress those perhaps most important aspects we would like to work with. So first of all, the correspondence makes visible the income-earning strategies of the household and the internal labor division. So basically, who was responsible for what. Also, it allows us to see the amount of parallel running businesses and the number of people involved in those with whom Simon continuously had to cooperate, had to inform them what's going to be the next step, had to keep them engaged. It also reveals how the financial uncertainty manifested in the everyday life of Simon and Kassák, and how it was connected to the unpredictability of the informal income sources. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, it really shows the extra emotional labor these informal businesses required, which was primarily put on Simon within this household. So basically, long story short, this is what we hopefully going to deal with in the next 1.5 years, and then we'll see where we get. Thank you very much.